shoulders and Joshua's down!
In that one again.
From Wladimir Klitschko, and Joshua is down now! The count's at 5. Will he make it up? It was a heavier fall than Klitschko's.
The argument that Anthony Joshua has a glass chin is one that I do not always agree with. I don't think Joshua has a glass chin. I think Joshua's powers of recovery is very, very poor. Take Tyson Fury for example. I think Tyson Fury has a weak chin. However, Tyson Fury's powers of recovery is absolutely incredible. Tyson Fury gets hit and gets hurt. Tyson Fury recovers quite quickly. Anthony Joshua gets hit and get hurt. Anthony Joshua stays hit, and it takes Joshua a few rounds to get his head back in the fight, to get his legs back, and to be able to pick up some momentum. For example, the Dillian Whyte fight, Joshua got hit on the temple with a left hook, and it took Joshua a few rounds to come back, to be able to sustain an attack, and then ultimately got Dillian Whyte out of there. Now, if Dillian Whyte was experienced, if Dillian Whyte was better than Joshua, which he wasn't, Joshua was clearly better, hence why he absolutely, knocked Dillian Whyte's spark out. But if Dillian Whyte was able to sustain an attack, he would have tested Joshua's ability to take shots even more. But Dillian Whyte could not. And you could see that, Joshua then recovered at some point after a few rounds and then went on to take Dillian Whyte out. If you look at the Charles Martin fight, Charles Martin didn't really test Joshua on the chin or on the temple. If you look at Dominic Brazil, same thing, didn't really test Joshua. Eric Molina still didn't test Joshua. Wladimir Klitschko fight was where we saw if Joshua could take a shot and how he recovers from the shot. Once again, Joshua's powers of recovery is very poor, which makes it seem as though he has a weak chin. Wladimir Klitschko is one of the hardest hitting heavyweights of his generation. Klitschko caught Joshua clean on the forehead. Joshua then went down. Joshua got up, and it took Joshua once again a few rounds to get Joshua back in the game, to get Joshua's legs working again. So, there it looked as though it wasn't just a chin issue, but just, recovery. His recovery is very poor. If you look at the Carlos Takam fight, Takam didn't really test Joshua's chin. If you look at Joseph Parker fight was just like a sparring session, really. Joshua was better on the night. He outclassed Joseph Parker. The referee was poor. Referee got into the fight, so Joseph Parker was not in a position to, test Joshua's chin. To be fair, Joseph Parker at that time, when he defended his belt against Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker was not as spiteful as he is now. Joseph Parker was not the fighter he is now. He wasn't that fighter, so he was not able to test Joshua's chin. Alexander Povetkin was able to test Joshua's chin. Now, not to the extent where he dropped Joshua, but Povetkin actually bloodied Joshua's nose. Povetkin hit Joshua with some really hard left hooks, which Joshua took very well. He wasn't really bothered as much like he was in the Dillian Whyte fight or in the Klitschko fight, but he was bothered, and it was shots that really, he had to be careful of. So, that was also a test, but once again, it wasn't that much of a test. The Andy Ruiz fight is where the whole world got to see that Joshua's, powers of recovery is absolutely terrible, as I said, rather than his chin. Now, Andy Ruiz hit Joshua on the temple with a left hook. The same left hook that Dillian Whyte hit Joshua with. Same left hook that Povetkin hit Joshua with. and the same left hook, once again, that Andy Ruiz hit Joshua with. So now we're seeing that Anthony Joshua's kryptonite, Anthony Joshua's weak point, is the temple with a left hook, because Andy Ruiz really exposed that. Now, if Joshua's chin was glass, if Joshua's chin was terrible, Joshua would not have gotten up. I mean, he got up a few times in that fight and he got stopped on his feet. Once again, Joshua could not recover because his powers of recovery is poor. So he stayed in that fight up until the 7th round, I believe. Andy Ruiz kept tagging Joshua, he kept hitting Joshua. His legs were gone, his head was not there. In the corner, he kept asking his trainer, what is happening to me? Because once again, maybe inexperience, he doesn't know what is going on with him in that fight with Andy Ruiz. And Joshua was basically just lost in that fight because, once again, guys, Joshua's powers of recovery is poor. Just couldn't recover. In the Kubrat Pulev fight, Pulev was not able to, test Joshua's chin like that. The Oleksandr Usyk first fight, Joshua's chin was tested. But I might say this though, Oleksandr Usyk did not have the power at that time. I think Usyk's power, had developed a bit more within the heavyweight division when he fought Tyson Fury. But I think the first fight against Joshua, Usyk's power was not as profound as it later was, or as it is now, because he's really gotten used to the division. Now, Joshua's chin was tested in that fight. If you guys can remember, in the last round of Usyk Joshua 1, or Joshua Usyk 1, Joshua was in the corner looking like he was about to faint. Now, was that just his stamina, or was it just Usyk being too fit as a fighter, right? The cardio was just too much. Was it Joshua's gas tank being in question there? Because I think he was tested not for his chin, but I think for his gas tank in that fight. But Usyk did not really test Joshua's chin like that. If you look at the Franklin fight, he was very tentative, right? After losing to Oleksandr Usyk twice, he was very tentative and he didn't know how to go about sustaining an attack. Franklin was not able to test Joshua's chin in that fight at all. If you look at Robert Helenius' fight, Robert Helenius was a late replacement. Helenius really didn't test Joshua's chin at all. I don't think he's that guy at that time. He's finished, so wasn't able to do much. Otto Wallin had a lot of talk about what he was going to do with Joshua. But once again, Otto Wallin did not have the power or the ability to test Joshua's chin. So we really didn't see that much of that in that fight. The Francis Ngannou fight, Francis Ngannou didn't really test Joshua's chin. Francis landed a few shots early on in that fight, but I think Joshua, as he is the bona fide heavyweight champion or ex-heavyweight champion, he was able to overcome Francis Ngannou and everything that Francis Ngannou threw at him. So in a fight, Francis Ngannou didn't really test Joshua's chin at all. And we know Francis Ngannou can hit. But unfortunately, or fortunately for Joshua, Francis Ngannou was not able to test his chin at all. And then the Daniel Dubois fight. Now, this is where Joshua's chin was tested the most in his career. And once again, I'll say this, guys, it is not Joshua's chin, but his powers of recovery. If you remember, Daniel Dubois hit Joshua with one of the biggest right hands I have ever seen. Joshua moved back in straight line and Daniel Dubois threw that right hand, overhand right hand, and it connects Joshua's chin, like bang on Joshua's chin. And Joshua went down, he got up and he fought on. Now when he went down, something that normally happens with Joshua, his legs stiffens, his head is gone, he doesn't know where it is in the fight, and it takes him rounds to recover. So Daniel Dubois, hurts Joshua in the first round. Daniel Dubois was able to finish Joshua in the 5th round. So he wasn't able to knock Joshua out in the 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, but in the 5th round. So Joshua was not able to recover. Now, if Joshua's chin was as glass as many would argue, I think Joshua would have been knocked out in the 2nd round. He kept getting up, he kept fighting on, but once again, his powers of recovery is so bad that he could not get into the fight because he just couldn't recover. So, is Joshua's chin that glassy, or is Joshua's powers of recovery just that bad? Get in the comment section and let me know. I think his chin is not the greatest, but I don't think he is chinny. I just think he just does not recover from shots very well. You might have a different opinion to me. That is absolutely fine. Get in the comment section and let me know. If you guys like this type of content where we have these conversations and look into things a bit more, let me know in the comment section below. As always, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.